Okay, what is going on, everyone? Welcome back to Mets Weekly. We are live at this very moment on YouTube and on X for pre-game coverage of the Mets versus Brewers Game 1 of the NL Wild Card Series. We have made it 162 games later, and postseason baseball has now relocated to Queens once again. Before we do that and we get into all of the details and all the specifics, I want to remind everyone to subscribe to the Mets Weekly YouTube channel if you have not already for live recordings of the Mets Weekly podcast in the future. For those of you who are watching live right now or on playback and you want to join the conversation, best way to do it is on YouTube because Twitter comments sometimes just are not able to go through. But make sure to turn on post notifications on our YouTube channel to know when we go live. And also after tonight's game, we will be going live for episode 88 of the Mets Weekly podcast as a post-game recap, basically taking in the playoff atmosphere. For those of you in the live chat as of right now, I want to let you know we love reading your comments, your questions, your concerns. If you feel like you're being ignored, you're not being ignored, you're just being starred throughout the show. And we'll be able to pull up as many as we can to keep the flow of the conversation going. Also, make sure to follow Mets Weekly on X and on TikTok, where we just wrapped up Frank's post-game thoughts for every single Mets regular season game. It was titled the Mets Frankly Postgame. We'll sure try to have some content out there in the future. But for the meantime, as well as our audio listeners, make sure to follow us on all your favorite listening platforms to not miss the audio version of new episodes that go up at 9 a.m. the following day. So without further ado, let's get into the pre-game show of Mets versus Brewers, the National League Wild Card round. We have made it to the postseason. And let's just say we are still, I guess, on the adrenaline high of yesterday. We are still pushing it into game one. No days off here because of a hurricane that the Braves made up, and it was a complete hoax. But we're still here. We're still alive. And hopefully the Mets take that adrenaline into game one against a team that they did not do well against in the regular season, And we are about to get into game one at about 5:30. We are 90 minutes away. So any of the pregame jitters, we got to get it out now. Frank, I'll go to you. You, for the first time, you're not going on TikTok after a Mets game in a long time. And you're going to sit here for forever. We're going to talk for like 4 hours after the game. So what do you think about this going into it? What are your general thoughts going into the postseason atmosphere for the first time in 2 years?
Yeah, I feel pretty good, honestly. I feel like for some reason, yesterday I had more of a 2015 sense going into the postseason than I did 2022. And that's because in 2015, I didn't really have high expectations. I mean, obviously, the first round series was against the Dodgers, and we kept hearing about, oh, you're going to face Greinke and Kershaw in the shadows, and it's going to be so difficult. And the Mets were underdogs going into that series. And then when they beat the Dodgers, it was like, oh, well, they're not going to beat the Cubs. The Cubs were so good in the regular season. They have Rizzo and Chris Bryant and Javi Baez and like all these great players. And then the Mets beat them too. So right now, I'm going in with not too high expectations, but if we see anything closer to what we saw in early September from this rotation, like if Severino steps up and Manaea steps up like the way they have before, you have a chance. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, is that when you have good starting pitching, you're in these games, and really you're one or two big hits away from certain guys, particularly I'm looking in that middle of the order area to kind of provide that, and you could win a ball game or two. And in a short series, anything is possible, to be honest with you. So, and even to go the other way, you would think the Mets were favorites against the Padres with the rotation that the Mets had. Oh, we could save DeGrom. We don't need DeGrom to go game one. That's if we need him. And sure enough, the Mets get eliminated. So I feel like for some reason, I'm not going over the moon like, oh, they have to win this series. They have to do this or whatever. I still find it very interesting, like with Lindor crying, Mendoza crying, all those guys saying we weren't expecting to be here, we weren't supposed to be here. I just find that very interesting. I feel like this is a group that's going in pretty loose, very excited, and I just feel like at this point anything can happen. Now, Milwaukee is a very bad matchup for us, and we'll get into that. But overall, I mean, I'm optimistic. I'm just curious to see what happens. I'm not too stressed. I mean, if they do terrible today, then I will be. But overall, I just kind of want to give them a fair shot and just see what happens.
Again, this is a clean slate. 0-0. Everybody starts new. It's the postseason. But there's just a little bit more higher stakes. 162 games brings you to this. And let's just say we've been anticipating this for a while since they got on this big run. Since that start of June 1st, whether you want to call it Grimace or the Oh My God dropping song from Jose Iglesias, the Mets just had quite a fun time. Lindor's team meeting. I don't even know what else there's been so much that has gone on this
Lopez
year.
Glove in the crowd, like there's a lot.
Or Lopez Glove in the crowd. I mean, we have had quite a journey, and I feel like with the maybe lenient expectations coming into this year, it's probably the main reason as to why we were a little bit more, I guess, like seldom in that feeling where we're like, okay, let's see what happens, because we had the let's see what happens going into this season. And, you know, I think that right now, if we don't go far in this and we don't, there's still going to be a lot to talk about. There's still going to be a lot more moving parts going into the offseason. Lots of free agents, lots of possibly team-altering moves that could be happening. And it's just a lot of fun to see this team kind of go in a different direction and hopefully get towards that sustainable winning where this isn't a rare occurrence. And we're here every single year. Andrew, I will go to you on your thoughts going into the postseason. Have they changed? Is there anything stupid that you would like to say before we get into all of the details? Because I do have a lot of notes to get over and talk about going into this game. I did a lot of research until 3 a.m, and then I had to go, coal mine as well, and then I also had to do tons of air. I mean, I had a really, really rough day, but I'm still here. All right, Andrew.
Yeah, I think kind of to echo what Frank said. I mean, you look back at, you feel it's 2022, even a live stream, you can go back, you could tell like we were hyped, we were like ready to go. There was a lot of like pumped up, happy energy. We were like, all right, let's go. And then you get fucking embarrassed. Today, I have felt no pressure. I have been like, okay, the game's going to be in an hour. I got the Royals game on. I'm like, honestly, I feel more pressure for that game than the Met game. Like today, I'm looking like, again, yes, the expectations changed mid-season. We know this. They hit the benchmark. Now this is all gravy. And again, like Frank said, the Brewers are division champs. They're the team that needs to win this series. They have home field. They had a better, better record and all this shit. Pressure's on them. We're just this stupid bang a gang of memes. They're just gonna have fun. And the power of friendship and pop stars, Grimace, it doesn't matter. But yes, the matchup's not great because if they put the record, I think the last 25 games at Miller Park or whatever the hell it's called now, they're like 4-21. So yeah,
the American Family feels
whatever the hell, American Family, Briller Mirror, whatever the hell it's called. It's the Brewers' home stadium.
I call it the accordion because it has the roof that's like the, that's what I call it.
But again,
I know my shapes.
Your shapes. Sorry. There you go. We'll give you a sticker after the stream. But yeah, I mean, right now I'm looser. I'm a loosey goose right now. Obviously, once that first pitch gets going and Lindor leads the game off with a homer, because I'm gonna call that right now. We're gonna go nuts. But right now, energy. I'm hype. I'm excited. But the nerves, like from where the nerves were in 2022, I'm vibing. Like I redesigned my room. Like I am ready to go. But yet, there's no stress, no fear. What happens. They already exceeded the expectation. Now it's all gravy time. And as a fat guy that likes gravy on his turkey, I'd like a lot of gravy. But guess what? I got some gravy, so I'm okay with it.
Yeah, if there's anybody who knows anything about gravy, it's definitely Andrew. Anyways, going into this postseason, and of course, the realm of all the details Of course, we started off the day with the postseason roster dropping, and I do want to talk about it because there are some interesting pieces that did get added, some that got subtracted, some that made a little bit more sense due to rest, such as Tyler McGill being left off of the postseason roster because he started yesterday, and there's the amount of 3 rest days for him to pitch. I mean, he probably would pitch in game 3 on 2 days rest, which just makes absolutely no sense for somebody who's stretched out as a starting pitcher. But I do want to pop up our October unit, as I want to call it, because I like to have these catchy little terms. You look at our postseason roster going into the wild card series. Your catchers, of course, Francisco Alvarez, Luis Torrens. Nothing crazy there. Infielders, Luis Angel Acuna, Pete Alonso, Jose Iglesias, the spark plug of the spark plugs, Francisco Lindor, the MVP candidate, and then Mark Vientos, the best third base prospect of the entire organization, may I just add. Outfielders, Harrison Bader, which is also known as Frank's favorite player on the team. Starling Marte, the youngest man on the squad. Brandon Nimmo, the guy who is very uncensored and can be very unhinged. Tyrone Taylor, Jesse Winker, who shows absolutely no emotion. And, of course, the guy who's the most athletic guy on the team, JD Martinez. Now, as for the pitchers, Sean Manaea, David Peterson, Jose Quintana, and Luis Severino are your starting pitchers. Oscar Barazaban, Jose Budo, Edwin Diaz, Reed Garrett, Phil Maton, Adam Ottavino, Ryan Stanek, and Danny Young. And, of course, one last addition that was added, someone we have not seen at all recently. That being Max Kranick, who is a 27-year-old pitcher drafted by Pittsburgh in 2016. It says 2026, but we're just going to go with it. He was claimed off of waivers from Pittsburgh by the Mets in the offseason, was expected to compete for the starting rotation, so he can give you a little bit of length, but he was placed on the 15-day IL due to a hamstring strain in spring training. When he came back, he pitched 70.2 innings in the Mets minor league system across multiple levels while rehabbing, posting a 2.82 earned run average. And he grew up as a lifelong Mets fan, for those of you who care about that sort of stuff, in Archbald, Pennsylvania, which is the state below New York, if you're wondering. Now, of course, Max Kranick is a little bit of a surprise because we didn't really have him on the radar whatsoever. I see a few guys on here that I mentioned that I do not want to put on the postseason roster, but you know what? I'm just going to live with it. Like we said, we're going into this loose. This is not there's no expectation here. They exceeded the expectations. And at the end of the day, they brought in a squad that they believe is the guys they can put in for the best position to win. There's obviously some key injuries that we have had. Kodai Senga went down. Jeff McNeil, we did get some updates on them. We'll talk about those in a second. But as for this roster, what do you guys have of your takeaways of how this has been formed? Because obviously we talked about this last episode, and, you know, I think that forming this thing together more is just more on the rest. But Frank, what do you think about this roster? Do you think that this is a good form of the group? I think that there's a few guys that we don't want on here, but at the end of the day, whatever.
Yeah, I think this doubleheader really kind of hurt what they want to do here as far as the roster. And I definitely am concerned about at least game one as far as what our actual options are with the bullpen. Considering Phil Maton working 3 days in a row, considering how much they had to use Edwin Diaz yesterday with the 40 pitches after 25 pitches the day before, Adam Ottavino pitching both games of doubleheader. Not that I would go to him, but I just feel like there are other guys on this in this bullpen you kind of want to avoid in general. Like I don't really want to use Huskar Brazaban in a big spot. I don't want to use Danny Young in a big spot. And I feel like I don't want to use Reed Garrett in a big spot. And I feel like Mendoza has kind of shared that sentiment when you look at the way he managed the bullpen yesterday, having Maton go on 3 days rest instead of going to Stanek, extending Diaz for 40 pitches instead of going to Stanek or Reed Garrett or somebody like that. Jose Budo's had his walk issues, but to me, I think he's next man up. I got to see what he could do because while I don't have a lot of confidence in him, I have more confidence in him than a whole lot of the other guys that are in this bullpen. And I do find that it's just very unfortunate what happened with a lot of these guys and injuries. So if you go all the way back to Brooks Raley, then to Daniel Nunez, then to Sean Reed Foley, and just plenty of other guys that the Mets have brought into this organization to be pitchers who have gotten injured and just were not available. So they had to stick with guys who technically are pretty tired because they didn't have a ton of viable major league options available that they could just turn to in the minors. As far as the position players, everything went as expected. I'm glad Jesse Winker is okay in the lineup tonight. Had an MRI in his lower back, so I guess that explains why he wasn't part of the doubleheader yesterday. But overall, everything went as expected. Max Kranick was a little bit of a surprise, but not a surprise that McGill was left off because of the near 100 pitches he threw yesterday. So overall, it's nothing to flip out about. I just think that it shows that, even though they signed a lot of guys to minor league deals and things like that during the offseason, you're definitely going to need some more. You could never have enough arms. It would be nice if we had some fresh arms we could turn to, and we didn't have to stick with Ottavino so long and stick with Danny Young for so long. Because when I look at this lineup that the Brewers put out there, it's a different combination than they did over the weekend, and they really kind of emphasize the lefty-righty matchups, which to me I think is a bit of a mistake against the Mets. I don't think it's something you really should prioritize because, like I said, I'm not really going to Danny Young anyway. So there's no lefty for you to be worried about the Mets turning to. You should just go with your best combination of guys that can help you score runs, not try to mess with pitching matchups. So that's just me. But overall, this kind of what we expected.
Yeah, and again, obviously coming in here live on YouTube. For those of you who have not, who are in here, make sure to hit the like button if you have not already. Hit the subscribe button, all that great stuff. Links in the description to follow us individually. For those of you on Twitter, please come over to YouTube so you can let us know of your opinions. It's just better because those comments come in a lot more fluently as compared to Twitter. They come in stagnantly. Still just a problem forever. But Christopher T coming in here, longtime viewer. He was here for a long time ago. I haven't seen him in a while, but he's back, saying he's been a minute since I've made a live. Well, welcome back. Saying he's been AFK for a bit. And again, I think that, right now in the predicament that they are in, it's just kind of unusual in just any of the slightest right now, because I think, with this doubleheader, flying from Atlanta to Milwaukee I mean, I think that, at the end of the day, they just have to be, happy that they survived at this current point, and that's probably what is just going to be that contributes to how they kind of form the roster, because even though, it's still a completely different season, anything can happen. It's a 3-game set, just like it is in the regular season. So, I mean, anything could happen. Sometimes when the ball doesn't roll your way, you get another shot. You win 2 out of 3, and you go to the next round, and then it's best of 5 to best of 7 to best of 7. So, obviously, there will most likely, if the Mets go down the line, will probably make a little bit more changes to the roster mid-series if they continue and get deeper into the playoffs. But for now, they're going to have to play this piece by piece. And we probably won't see Tyler McGill at all in this series. We probably won't see, we might not see David Peterson either, unless he comes in relief in the second or third game. But Andrew, I'll go to you. Is there anything part of the postseason roster that you want to add that Frank didn't touch already?
I guess it could have been a solution to the problem that they had, and the fact that earlier in the season them instead of, maybe calling up, one of the prospects that we've talked about, a Sprout or a Tidwell, just to be able to make him available for the postseason, maybe comes back to bite him. But again, this is like the hand that we're dealt. And like we said, with the 40-man roster, they didn't want to act to put those guys. They wanted just to let them stay down there. It maybe would have been, just to have him as an insurance policy for this situation. But again, we didn't know that a month ago. We thought he'd be a playoff team. But again, we didn't expect a hurricane and then, bullshit to happen in Atlanta to be in this situation normally. But again, there was no surprise. Like, I think just to say, Winker being okay, because again, you would have probably seen Brett Beatty here. He's on the taxi squad as well, like Reyes and Senjer. So again, and like you said, if you get past this series, you can change your rosters after every series. So you can activate back Tyler McGill and you can bring other guys. But it's just kind of the way that they used the 40-man roster this year and not, pushing the pitchers a little faster than just letting those, top prospects go. It would have been potentially nice to see him maybe, again, Sprout as an X factor, but, we'll see him next year. But again, with the cards you're dealt, with the situation you're in, it's kind of the best what you get. Again, you don't love that, your closer right now tonight is probably Ryan Stanek with the setup as Reed Garrett or Jose Budo. Again, you don't love that, especially in a close game that these games are going to be. Again, this game specifically, let's score 9 or 10. Let's have one of those explosion innings, guys, because the offense is going to have to carry at least tonight because of the misfortunes of the pitching.
Yeah, and I do actually want to talk about the pitching. Because we know that we're going to have a shorthanded bullpen going into game one. And this is one of the emphasis points that I obviously want to have on this pregame show of how the Mets kind of can approach this. And I do have some ideas that I want to throw at you guys in case of these scenarios with Luis Severino, because we've seen tons of scenarios before. We have seen him get blown up, and we've seen him go 9 innings. So, I mean, we have seen an entire array of a full season with Luis Severino. But I'm going to tell you right now, side note, I'm just glad we saw a Luis Severino that was healthy the entire year. But as for the pieces that are unavailable, you're not going to see Edwin Diaz. You're not going to see Adam Ottavino. I'm so upset about that. Phil Maton, you will most likely not see after he worked 3 days in a row. Oscar Brazaban most likely will not see him. Tyler McGill is not available and not on the roster. And then Minaya will be starting game 2, so he will not be available. And then David Peterson, he will most likely not pitch on short rest. And then, of course, Jose Quintana, it seems like it was hinted that he will most likely pitch game 3, but it's not official yet. It's still not necessary yet for the Mets. So I'm sure that they're going to cross that bridge when they get to it. So what is available right now in the current bullpen would be Max Kranick, Danny Young, Reed Garrett, Jose Budo, and Ryan Stanek. Stanek and Kranick rhyme. Did you guys realize that? That's crazy. Andrew, did you realize that? That's insane.
Fucking idiot.
Anyways, so here are my scenarios. This is what I would prefer to do, and I will send you guys this in like a little bit of a docket so you could rearrange things of how you would do it. But if you get a Severino blow up, I'm going with Kranick for 3 to 4 innings because he can be stretched out as a starter, as a long relief guy. And he has been hurt, so I don't know how much they want to be pushing him. But he did get a decent amount of sample size in the minor leagues, so they didn't want to push him. But now he is healthy because obviously they chose him out of the woodwork to join the postseason roster. And then I would go Danny Young for 2 innings. If you want to just do like those kinds of matchups just to eat innings, again, that would just be a Severino blow up, and they would just be going on to the next game. If Severino goes 5 innings, I would go Stanek 1 inning for the 6th, Budo 2 for the 7th and 8th, and then Reed Garrett for the 9th. If Severino goes 6 innings, I would go Stanek 1 inning for the 7th, Budo 1 inning for the 8th, and then 1 inning for Garrett in the 9th. Severino goes 7. Budo for 1 inning pitched. Garrett 1 inning pitched for the 8th and the 9th. You can switch those in and out. And then Severino, if he goes 8 innings or 9 innings, obviously 9, you wouldn't have to use anyone, but 8, I would go with Garrett in the 9th because I would prefer to save Jose Budo over somebody like Garrett, who we all know can have his moments, let's just say that. So I'll just send this to you guys of an actual situation. Just a little screenshot in DMs if you guys want to look at it and kind of dupe this thing out, or just give me what you would plan on utilizing this bullpen, because they are in definitely a tight crunch today. They have a shorthanded bullpen as to where you're really hoping that Severino can give you 6 or 7 innings, and then you can kind of piece it all together. And I really hope that you do. But, again, you never know. We have seen blow-ups against the Brewers this season already. But Andrew, I can go to you on that type of plan. What would you switch out? Maybe, kind of configuring it a little bit differently. I mean, I feel like the mop-up duty is probably what you're looking at with the worst-case scenario. And then you only have, like, Kranick and Young probably for that role. I feel like that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, again, like, if this is a blow-up, I mean, hell, I'm doing kind of like we did with Lucchesi. Like, it depends what the score of the game is. Like, let's say it gets nuts, then I'm just sending, like, let's say he only can't get out of the 3rd inning. Stanek's going 5 then, and then you can go Danny Young. Well, you don't need to because you're getting blown out.
Kranick.
Kranick's going 5 or Stanek?
Kranick's going.
See, they rhyme.
The K, the one with 1 K, not the 3. Kranick goes 5 and just eats the rest of the game. I'm not burning any more bullpen. I'll concede game 1, save my bullpen for game 2. I guess let's talk about the positive. Let's go to the positive route here. And if Severino can go 7, I'm not putting Reed Garrett in. I don't give a shit. Give me Budo 1 and Stanek, because again, what was the reason we went out and got Ryan Stanek? This dude's a dog in the postseason. Well, guess what? It's postseason time, brother. And I do think Stanek's got better stuff than Garrett, so I'd rather go Stanek and Budo. I probably would close Stanek, Budo in the 8th, because especially how Milwaukee plays. Can we try? Yes, and Budo does not have the, obviously has that walk problem, and so does all 3 guys. I mean, I'm fucking picking between, piss, shit, and diarrhea. But I think Stanek strikeout stuff should close, and I think Budo I've always liked more than Garrett. So for me, if let's say Severino goes 6, you get an inning out of each of them. Because again, let's say if you were to go Budo 2 innings, we've seen Reed Garrett come in with runners in scoring position. And especially how the Brewers run like Helen Keller, I'm not trying to do that here. I'm going to use Garrett. He's starting an inning. I'm not bringing Garrett in with runners on. So if the plan is to get Garrett in the game, have him start an inning, nobody on base. But again, and we've seen with Budo, a lot of 2 innings. But we've seen lately, the first inning is good, but then you send him back out for that 2nd inning and he walks. Then there's the trouble coming, and I'm not going to Reed Garrett. I guess if you were put in that situation, let's say Budo has a dominant 7th, let's say, you bring him back out for the 8th. I'm going to Stanek in the fire situation to save, than rather having Garrett come in and with guys on base. I guess I'd save Garrett for the closing spot, which, goddamn pray. But again, for me, in this scenario, if best case scenario, Sevy, you're a free agent, you're not guaranteed, go out there and shove, and you're going 8. Like, we need you to go. You have a complete game this year. You're not under contract next year. Burn them. Again, the gloves are off. Like, if you're going and you're, kill them. I don't care. Obviously, we got rounds to be. But right now, you're not under contract. We don't have any control of you next year. So right now, we're gonna ride you. And if you're dealing, let them ride as long as possible. Because again, especially with the shorthandings of this bullpen, let him eat. And hey, eat those a complete game. He gets paid in the offseason. Cool. I'm not really focused on that right now. With the bullpen limitations, Mendoza's always been that player's umpire. If he's eating, let him eat as much as possible.
Yeah, I'm gonna just clue in here and then go right directly to Frank on this one. I think that obviously all bets are off in the postseason when we talk about, with that. Obviously, you have a little bit less of room, margin for error in a 3-game series. We obviously look at that 100 pitches, pitch count, usually. And if he is rolling, is there a beyond limit that you would go? Like, would you go 120? Would you go 115? Like, is that the type of pitch count you're looking at? If he's on a roll, let's say he gave up, he's at 1-run ball through 7 innings and he's at 97 pitches. Are you letting him go? Are you putting the cap on it, going 115, 120, see if he still has it until he doesn't, until he gives up a base runner? like the leash, I feel like it all really has to do with the rhythm, like we talked about last night. But with the leash of letting him go, because Severino has been healthy all year. I mean, he has been, and it's all in terms of volume, but that's the best case scenario. Because if he gets into the seventh, pitches past the seventh inning, we're in good shape. But I mean, what do you think the limit would be to cap it off if he is rolling? Because sometimes you have these controversies in the postseason. He took him out too early. He took him out too late. Like, I feel like the timing and the rhythm of this is something that they're going to have to look at if he does get deep into this game. What do you think, Frank?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking back at his pitching outings from this year. So obviously, the season high was that complete game against Miami, where he did 113 pitches. Other than that, his outings, like he's kind of topping out at 100. You'll see like a 102, a 103. But overall, in his last 3 starts, you're looking at 89, 86, and 86. And in all these starts, he gave up 3 runs or more. So I feel like I'm kind of like you said. It depends how he's doing. I feel like there's a difference between 7 innings of 1-run ball with like 2 hits and 1 walk compared to 7 innings of 1-run ball with 6 hits and 2 walks. If it's the latter, I'm pulling him because he's escaped too many jams. But if he is legitimately on a roll and is your best option, then I would let him go. And like Mendoza has done with kind of getting the sense of the player. Like if he says, no, I'm good for that 113 mark again, 115 or so, then so be it. I mean, like Andrew said, if there's ever a time to just really go all out, it's now. And not only because it's the playoffs, but also the situation with the bullpen not having those guys available. And like we talked about the different scenarios, there's no like, oh, that's the way to go. Like, oh, that's the blueprint. Yeah. Like, go to this guy, go to that guy, and we're fine. They all seem kind of risky. So I feel like he is your best option today. So I would definitely be willing to let him go out there. But, there's a lot that depends into it. I mean, are the Mets up 3 runs? Are they up 1 run? Is it a tie game? Are they behind 1 run? Like, there's a lot of different situations that could kind of change the thought process and the decision-making of trying to keep it as few runs as possible. Hopefully we get some kind of offense today, so that makes the decision much easier. But I think overall, I think 105, there's nothing wrong with that. If he's been going 103, 110, like we said, now is the time to do it. He's pitching on full rest. So he's pitching actually on quite a bit of rest. He's got 7 days rest, no? Because he pitched last Tuesday. So
yes, he's on rest.
He's pretty rested. So I feel like it definitely is the time to really push him. And like you said, he got through the whole season healthy. And, when that decision happened in Miami, and I mean, we're going quite a ways back now. We're going back to August 17th. We were like, oh, is now the time to do it? Don't you want to keep him healthy? Maybe limit his innings? You want to get him through the season? Now that he's got through the season, you don't have that anymore. You could let him go. Yeah. So, I mean, he's been healthy all year. He's made a lot of changes to his workout regime, his diet, sleep, all that stuff. So he's much healthier now. And let's see what happens. But, I think overall, as far as the bullpen, I'm with Andrew. That Stanek is the guy in the 9th inning for me. That playoff experience means a lot. Reed Garrett, I could just see him folding in the big spot, to be honest with you. I know he's a very emotional guy where, like, if he gets out, he's going to be screaming and going crazy. But I think overall with that walk issue, I can't trust it late in games. I could see him kind of falling apart there if the Brewers start stealing bases. Like, I just feel like you need the guys who have been there in the big spot, and Stanek has been on the biggest of big stages. That if there's anyone who is kind of used to it, not that he's been great, if there's anyone that's kind of used to it, it would be him. So I let Garrett be more of that middle relief, like you talked about. Let's say Sevy goes 5, you let Reed go 6, and then maybe Budo for 2, and then hopefully Stanek in the 9th. But I'm also with Andrew that, like, if Budo all of a sudden is walking batters and he doesn't have it, you have to, like I talked about yesterday, you got to have that trigger. It's like if the guy has it, leave him out there. If he doesn't have it, you need to pull him and try something else out. So they do have to consider that. I feel like the one instance I might go to Danny Young is that 8-9-1 spot. So you have Sal Frelick, the left-hander, Joey Ortiz, the right-handed hitter. He's not amazing. And then Bryce Terang, the left-handed hitter. That's the one spot I might go to Danny Young. Other than that, I don't think it's worth facing any of these lefties with the righties batting after them, because you go after Churio, you got Contreras after him, go after Mitchell, Adames is too dangerous, and then Rhys Hoskins is too dangerous against the Mets. And I feel like that's the other thing that kind of drives you nuts when you're looking at this as like a breakdown. If you were to pull up like the OPS plus of everyone on the Mets and everyone on the Brewers, The Mets have more guys with the better OPS pluses. The Brewers actually have quite a bit guys who are below league average. However, if you pull up the stolen bases of everybody on the Brewers versus everybody on the Mets, the Brewers blow the Mets out of the water with the amount of guys who could swipe a bunch of bags. So even though they don't give you statistics in the traditional sense of offense, with how many infield hits they get, with how often the Brewers bunt, how often they steal, they still generate enough offense with their really strong pitching. So that's the other thing to look at, is that you may look at a bunch of these guys and you're like, oh, well, he's below league. Like even Rhys Hoskins, for example, he's a 98 OPS plus, but against the Mets, it's much higher than that. So, there are those things to consider when you're looking at it as a fan, and you're like, oh, but this guy's batting, 250 and 240 and 230. But like overall, they find ways to be productive. They play good defense. Like they're just a very tough team in that regard, where they do so many other things well.
Yeah, of course. I want to get into some stuff about with the Brewers going forward, but for the time being, just with Sevy, and then I do want to move on to the pitcher that we will be facing. But with Sevy, I'm going to tell you right now, even if he is on a roll, I'm not going to say this would be the time to do it with all the adrenaline and all of I want to see 100. I want to see it. I need to see 100. I'm not saying 101, but if he needs to empty the tank. All right. And we already know that he can be electric. He was electric at one point. We've seen him touch, 98, 99 here, but, with the adrenaline, it could happen. I will be a little bit disappointed if we don't see 100 at any point. That's all because of if he would be on a roll or not. But in case of, if he just doesn't have it, we'll see what happens. But, in regards to the actual pitching matchup, I want to talk about Freddy Peralta. Now, Freddy Peralta, we already knew was going to be the Game 1 starter. He is their best pitcher. Even though he's not having the best season, he still is a really good pitcher. And there are some notes that I do want to take down. The scouting report regarding Freddy Peralta, just to know what to expect. Now, he's a 4-pitch righty. For those of you who don't know, he has a 4-seam that he uses 54% of the time. A slider that he uses at 22%, changeup at 17%, and a curveball at 7%. His best graded pitch is his 4-seam fastball that sits 94 to 95, tops 99, arm side run with over 17 inches of induced vertical break, around a 4.1 vertical approach angle. That is in degree units. Of course, we've talked about that before. That is pretty much elite status, hovering around 4. And for those of you, the overall grades, 112 stuff plus, a 99 command plus, and a 101 pitching plus for that pitch. As for the rest of his arsenal, he's got a low spin arm side slider, side spinning changeup. Try saying that 5 times fast. With over 16 inches of horizontal glove side run, and a sliding hybrid curveball, also known as a slurve. And as for those 2024 notes, other things that you can look out for, he has struggled to avoid the barrel window this season with a 8.7% barrel rate, and opponents are posting a 379 expected weighted on base average on contact against him overall against his pitches. Opponents are slugging 424 and have a 44.1% hard hit rate against his 4-seam fastball. The walks are up this year of his usual career numbers, but he does still have plus control. He is a massive line drive pitcher. He has that at about 23.5%, which is 5th highest among starting pitchers in 2024. And for those of you who want to know the history of Freddy Peralta in the postseason, he has given up 5 earned runs in 13 innings pitched for 4 postseason appearances. Now, as for with Freddy Peralta, there is one piece that I do want to add in here, and that's going to go under my 2 players to watch. I'm going to have one for each of these pre-games. I'm going to have one for the Mets and one for their opponent. The player to watch here is Jesse Winker, who has been out for quite a while, for quite a few games. It looks like his back tightened up. I don't know what's the deal with the backs on this team. But in terms of the history that he has with Freddy Peralta, he has a lot of it. He's been in the NL Central for quite a while. And in his career, he is 6 for 18 against Freddy Peralta with 2 home runs against him. So maybe he's a key piece. Again, maybe that will allow them to give more pitches to Alonso to just whiff at down the middle. But when we talk about the overall matchups of Lindor and Nimmo and Iglesias, Vientos has not faced him before. Alonso, Lindor does have a home run against him. But as for everyone else, it's kind of a rough history. Let's just say that. Jose Iglesias, I believe, is 0 for 5 against him. Nimmo has not succeeded well against him. Starling Marte, I know, has a few hits against him. But other than that, that's what you're kind of looking at it per matchup wise. But again, this is a heavy fastball guy that I feel like you really got to hunt on location. He's not going to miss many times, but when he does miss, you're going to have to trade some of that contact for power. Let's just say that. And I've talked about this before in the postseason, but this is something that you got to emphasize against a pitcher like Freddy Peralta. But going into this matchup with him, we know that he is a really good pitcher. He's one of the best at his very best. Not having the greatest season, but again, postseason time, he can definitely be a riser. Again, he is their top pitcher on that staff. We know Milwaukee has great pitching regardless. We're going to have great pitching matchups against them throughout this entire series, no matter how long it goes. So how are you looking at this, approaching this against somebody like Freddy Peralta? I'll go to you, Frank, on this one, because I know that you do like Freddy Peralta a lot, so I'm sure that you keep some tabs on his stuff.
Yeah, I do. I feel like he's always been a perfect fit for the Mets. I was hoping they could maybe make a trade for him once Corbin Burns left, and just with that connection that David Stearns has with Milwaukee. Peralta, he's just a consistent pitcher. I mean, he's a guy that he goes in there year in, year out, makes just about every start, guy that has been an all-star, and he just seems to always be available for the Brewers, doing good things for them, and a big part of why they've had their sustained success, having sustained good starting pitching. Losing Corbin Burns, Brandon Woodruff's been hurt. Obviously, he's out this year. So Peralta's been the guy who's still stuck around and now is at the top of that rotation. And while he's not having the greatest year, he still had a very solid year. And he's someone that I feel is also a tough matchup for the Mets because of, like you talked about, with all that horizontal break that he has on his pitches, with the slurve, with the slider. That's going to be tough. And I'm surprised that Marte has good numbers against him, because I feel like he's a guy I'd worry about chasing that slider, that slurve. I'm looking at guys like, obviously, Vientos. This is a matchup you definitely would not bring JD Martinez in, but I feel like a lot of these right-handed hitters for the Mets are guys that would struggle against that archetype that we've seen so much of with a lot of pitchers nowadays. So I feel like I would like to see Nimmo kind of get it going. He's kind of the guy I'm highlighting. As far as you talk about maybe running into a barrel, with the way Nimmo has played this year, just every now and then running into a big home run, I'm hoping he could catch one, maybe catch a fastball or something like that early in the count when maybe Peralta's not expecting it, thinking Nimmo might be taking. Obviously, Winker, he's due for a big hit. We brought him in to get a big hit against right-handed pitching, and he got the one against Baltimore, but overall, there hasn't been too much else. And like you said, he does have good career numbers against Peralta. So I'm looking at the lefties mostly. If I get anything from Alonso, I'd be pleasantly surprised. But, obviously Lindor's MVP. Iglesias has his hitting streak. So, there's going to be some opportunities. But, I do wonder if they are going to be aggressive again, like the way they were on Sunday. Now, Eric Haas was behind the plate for Milwaukee instead of William Contreras. So I wonder if they still have that aggressive approach of, maybe Lindor tries to swipe one. Maybe Taylor tries to take one. Maybe you could finally send Marte and have him do what he was brought in here to do. Because it was like you were talking about with somebody like Peralta, it's going to be tough to string those hits together, the single after single, or the walk after walk in a single. You're going to need the big hits. And if you're not going to get the big hits, you got to get those extra bases by maybe stealing, because Milwaukee's going to do that to you on the other end. So I feel like those are all things to consider when you're in the postseason and you're facing this really good starting pitching.
All right, game one, Andrew, going into this matchup with Freddy Peralta. Anything you want to echo? Anything you want to add regarding that? Because I think that with this matchup, you're going to get, I think it's going to be a premium amount of opportunities to score because this is a really good pitcher and somebody that can definitely be made for the postseason with the stuff that he has.
Yeah, again, like kind of echoing with kind of what Frank said, he's maybe the most underrated pitcher because again, he's steady. He's not gonna, he's not an ace, but he's a guy you can consistent say 170 innings every year in his career. He's been an all-star. Obviously, we would have thought the Brewers are kind of in the same situation the Mets were this year. It was like, oh, it's kind of a punt year / maybe if they're bad, they sell the deadline. No, they go win out and win the National League Central, which was god awful. But again, you look at this lineup. Again, like I said, you don't love the horizontal movement because, again, we know the fishing that, Alonso does, Starling Marte does. I guess one good thing is Tyrone Taylor's in center field, not Harrison Bader. So you take that, easy out of the lineup. But, again, I guess if you're, obviously Winker has the good numbers. If I'm going to say the X factor of this game, I'm going to go in the 9-hole. Because if first pitch fastball, Francisco Alvarez would be nice to, pop one out of here. I think that maybe, obviously, Lindor, excluding obviously the top of that lineup, I think the guy that has to pick the click, I guess, if that's what we're going to, most other segments call it, I'm going to go Alvarez, because, again, I think if he can get a first pitch fastball, he's been better down the stretch. I think he's the type of guy, one pitch that can, especially in the playoffs, we talk about, power matters. He's, for me, that, kind of my guy. If I'm going to pick a guy tonight that can, can change this game, I'm going to go Alvarez. But, again, Pete Alonso, knock, knock. No, you're still hibernating. Get your 3 strikeouts and look a fastball right down the middle. Vogel back in, or just swing right through it. At least you swing unlike that other guy. But again, Vientos, you need, obviously your stars are going to need to show up. But the 2 power kids, those are kind of the guys you got to watch: Alvarez and Vientos.
It'll be interesting to see how Vientos bodes well against it. We've talked about a lot of these guys that have waved at the slider. Of course, going to the arm side, righty. That has definitely been a struggle, and I hope that they kind of emphasize that in the off season. That's a different topic, but Vientos has not been one of those guys who has done that. He's been actually fairly consistent at not chasing the outside stuff. He's more been chasing the downstairs stuff, more of the breaking stuff, and not just actual run to the arm side. Some other things that I do want to mention is some more keys to them winning this game. I do want to get into it. But another thing that I do want to say on the other end, which I probably should have brought up with Severino already, the players to watch on the other end, that being Willy Adames and Rhys Hoskins. Combined, they are 7 for 17 with 2 home runs against Severino. Both of them are right-handed hitters, so there is a way you can take advantage of that, and I will get into that in a second with my keys to the game and anything that you guys want to ask. But as for other pieces that I do want to add in here, we have, excuse me, sorry. Whoops.
Oh, by the way,
what just happened there?
Yeah, James McCann has murdered a coach for the Royals in this game. He struck out and then threw the bat into the Royals dugout and took out the ball boy. So that's why I was laughing 5 minutes ago. He swung at a high fastball and the bat went this way and hit the ball boy in the Royals dugout. James McCann.
Did you know that we're paying him to do that?
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Corbin Burns continues to dominate, but yeah.
Anyways, as for the offense in this game, I'm just continuing to flip around. We already know that matchup induced what the Brewers have been able to do against us. We pretty much have the book on them. If the Mets are able to execute it, they will be able to win this game. And as for my keys to the game, I do want to preface this that most likely this will be a graphic next time, but I just was not able to put it together in time for this. So as for right now, I got some more numbers to put out here of some keys to the game. Now, first one I want to put out here is set the tone, attacking early. If a stolen base threat like Lindor, even Nimmo, even Iglesias, Marte, Taylor, if any of those guys get to first base, send the runner to take away the double play, because against a premium Brewers defense, any ground ball on the ground, especially against somebody like Freddy Peralta, who does get a good amount of ground balls, you're going to be in trouble. Now, you don't have the slow JD Martinez to ground into some double plays here, but you still have some guys that can hit the ball on the ground a lot. And for William Contreras, base stealers are 50 for 61 against him. That is a 81.9% success rate. So if you get somebody on base who can steal a base, do it. Get the jump, take away the double play, put him in scoring position. And then it's all up to situational hitting, which we all know that is pretty fun for this team. Now, as for the hitting, I want to talk about something called premium damage. We already said this already. 46.7% of Peralta's pitchers have landed in the strike zone this year. That is second lowest among starting pitchers, which is second only behind our guy, Jose Quintana. Can you tell that Quintana doesn't pitch in the strike zone that much? But as for the hitters, they have posted a 367 expected WOBA on contact on upper and the middle thirds of the strike zone combined versus Freddy Peralta, which means if you see something in the zone, swing at it, don't stare at it. That's really something that has been a bugaboo for this team in streaks this year. When we talk about level 0 to 100, that's one of the main culprits. And also hitters have a 917 OPS on pulled batted ball events against Peralta this season. So again, if you want to catch up to it, I would want to put some mustard behind it. Let's just say that. Go for the EVs, because one thing he's susceptible to this year has been hard contact. And of course, the final piece, traffic control. Throw more strikes to guys like Churio and Terang, also guys like Sal Frelick, to keep them off the base paths. Prevent stolen base threats to get stolen base chances. The Brewers were 17 for 17 in stolen base attempts versus the Mets this season. And also to think about that for a second, the Brewers, in terms of getting them to chase, in terms of pitching around the strike zone, they don't do that. They are third in lowest chase rate out of all 30 teams this year. How do you prevent that? Well, you locate cutters properly, which they have a negative 7.2 run value against cutters. Severino's cutter this year has a 26% whiff rate, which is his highest put away pitch to arm side movement. So a lot of right-handed hitters, he can get those whiffs and try and get the chases as well, but also in the zone too, which his cutter has been one of the main reasons as to why he's been able to get on early in the counts and not walk batters. Like that's been a problem for this pitching staff. Now, as for other keys to this game, I mean, I could give you guys these notes as well. But as for just going into this game, the keys to success, I feel like we have just seen this Brewers team definitely make an established run at this Mets team, because they were in really important parts of the season both times. We started off the season with them. It set the tone for this season, and we started off 0-5 thanks to them sweeping us. We had a lot of frustration. We had Jeff McNeil going after Rhys Hoskins, whining like a little bitch that he is. And then you also had Rhys Hoskins completely just terrorizing us, them running all over us. And that was a team that we saw firsthand a finished product of David Stearns. Let's not forget, David Stearns was the executive for the Milwaukee Brewers. So definitely he has the book on them. So maybe there's a way we can cheat that way. So I just sent you guys those little snippets of notes as well. If there's anything you guys want to add to that, because I feel like we all can establish what the Brewers do well. We already know what they do. That's being stealing bases, just the overall intangible part of the game. That's what they do well, and that's how they do score. And they also have some guys who can give you some power at will. Somebody like Willie Adames, who's having a phenomenal year. He's going to get paid big time in free agency. We know Rhys Hoskins can always come back to bite us. Jackson Churio, young athletic, powerful, strong player in the outfield. William Contreras, we know, has the power. Don't really like his walk-up song at all. That's not meant for you, buddy. Andrew, I'll go to you if there's anything you want to add to these notes going into this series. And then we'll pretty much wrap it up from here. I don't want to go completely too long because I want to give some people some breather into this game because I know there's some stress in Mets land because they want to win so badly. But as for you, Andrew, what else would you add to the keys to this game?
I mean, you've hit on most of them, so I'll go with the generic default. Score early. Get the crowd out of it. It's not like this isn't Philly.
I already put that there. Well, you're not paying attention.
Well, yeah. Well, no, you just said jump early and counts. But again, Milwaukee isn't a Philadelphia. It's not like this hostile hell. Once you get behind, there's kind of no shot because that crowd can take over a game. It's kind of like a 10th guy. Milwaukee's not like that. But again, first pitch homer, Lindor. It's right there. Bet the over. First pitch, solo shot. Shut them up early and go back to work. Again, like you said, keep these guys off the bases. And I'm just saying this. Just walk Rhys Hoskins 4 times. I don't give a shit if his base is loaded. Just walk him 4 times. Let anyone else in that fucking lineup beat you. Anybody else. Do not pitch to Rhys Hoskins. I don't give a shit. You got Sal Frelick, who's a noodle, and Joey Ortiz, who's a solid ball player. But anyone else in that lineup can beat me. Do not let Rhys Hoskins beat you. Just put them on all 4. Garrett Cole, Rafi Devers. Bye. Go to first. I don't want nothing to do with Rhys Hoskins. Make someone else do it. Make the Noodles beat you and play that game. But again, you have to keep those Noodles off as well. So at that point, jump early and just don't let Rhys Hoskins beat you. Those are only my. That's for me. That's go to work.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're gonna cut it off at an hour here. So any last comments you want to put in there, Frank? Because obviously the big show that we have is going to be the post game for the podcast, of course, of all those notes we can get into. Maybe we'll hang out a little bit. We'll answer some questions. Maybe, I don't know, maybe we'll have Huck Collins. I don't know if we will. I still have not, I still haven't made a decision on that. But, we're just giving our thoughts going into this game. A lot of the adrenaline going into the postseason. And game 1 starts in less than a half hour for us. So, Frank, what do you think? Asking for this one. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm kind of interested to see how Sal Frelick plays, considering the collision he had in right field over the weekend in the series the Mets had against the Brewers, going into like that chain area. I thought he was really hurt. I thought whether it was his back or hip or both, I thought it just looked really bad for him. Could barely walk, had to be helped off the field. The broadcast mentioned it like it was like Aaron Rowan-like when he crashed into the wall face first in Citizens Bank against the Mets, and he was out for quite a period of time. But Frelick to be back in there, I'm curious to see kind of where his health is at and just kind of see mostly where his speed is at because, he's a guy that is one of these big-time speed threats on Milwaukee. And to go from barely being able to walk over the weekend to now all of a sudden be in the outfield again and be another potential stolen base threat, I'm kind of curious to see where his health is at. But, it's more so just like we said, the amount of guys who do have those lower numbers overall offensively. So, and that they're looking for walks. That's the other thing too, is that like this Mets team struggles with walks, but the Brewers are looking to draw walks because they don't chase. So you can't beat yourselves. Like we said, you really have got to be more aggressive with some of these hitters because the guys that you should be walking, if you're going to walk them, should be William Contreras. Like Andrew said, should be Rhys Hoskins because Rhys Hoskins is the one guy who isn't a stolen base threat. But when it comes to all those guys that you mentioned, guys like Terang, guys like Frelick, guys like Bowers, all those guys need to be the ones that you go after much more aggressively to have them put the ball in play and trust your defense to make some plays. Because if you put them on base, and the next thing is that if they get on, it becomes a walk is really more a double or a triple, especially if they're going to do their bunting thing. So one of the other things I find interesting, I talked about how their lineup configuration is different. They did not have Jackson Churio bat second when they played the Mets over the weekend. They had Garrett Mitchell there. I think Sal Frelick was there as well. So when the leadoff man got on,
I don't think they had Contreras either.
They had Contreras Friday, Saturday. They didn't have him Sunday. That's when Haas played.
No, Hoskins maybe. I don't know. They sat a decent amount of guys. Yeah.
They sat a decent amount on Sunday, but Hoskins was there because he hit the grand slam, so he definitely was there. Adames was there, But what happened was when the leadoff hitter got on, whether it was Mitchell or Frelick, they were bunting in that number 2 spot. But Churio has had such a good season that he is not going to be bunting. So that's the other thing that I'm kind of curious about, to see how their approach changes a little bit as far as, if they are going to be bunting as frequently. Because the way I'm looking at it is that the way they kind of structured this, I don't know if Frelick's going to necessarily be bunting this time because he has Hoskins in front of him. And I don't know if Garrett Mitchell's going to be bunting this time because he has Contreras in front of him. So there's not as much speed in front of those guys that were bunting this time around.
Yeah, obviously we know what the Brewers' MO is, and then we know that how they beat us. I mean, I'm hoping that in one of these games we'll be able to throw out one runner, just one. I mean, they're 17 for 17
and that's
against us.
where maybe going to Torrens late in game is
maybe
a good defensive replacement. If Alvarez's spot is cleared in the lineup, let's say he bats bottom 7, he's last out, I don't see why not. I mean, it's something to definitely consider, especially when going to those relievers who struggle with the run game. You should be looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that you're going to get that much of an intense deal regarding some of our relievers with Adam Ottavino out of the equation for today, so maybe we get saved from that. But the Mets have definitely struggled with holding base runners in the birth of these new rules that are out there. So we're going to definitely see a different game out there, and hopefully the Mets can adjust to that going forward. It has gotten better with the help of Luis Torrens. We know that Alvarez has had kind of like an average season throwing out runners. Not great, but he was definitely better than Omar Narvaez, who was absolutely abysmal throwing guys out from second base or third base, possibly the worst defensive catcher in all of the league when he came here, even though he was signed for defense. But this isn't the Omar Narvaez show, but both of these teams he played for. So, that's a cool factoid that's so useless and nobody will fucking care about. But for that, we're going to wrap things up here. We're just going to stay here for an hour because obviously we got the big show, the post game after the game. Make sure to tune into that if you have not already. Set your notifications for that. We're going to be live on YouTube and on X as we usually are for the post game, and then that post game will be out on audio as a podcast episode. But for the pregame here, we're just here on YouTube shooting the shit for everybody. Everybody's commenting. It's just kind of a light hearted thing before we get into the craziness of postseason baseball, the stress. Even though we've said we're a little bit chill here, they exceeded the expectations. We're just happy to be here. We're having a good time, and hopefully it's just more of things to come. Now, for those of you in here, for those of you watching on X, Twitter, let us know what you guys think about this game for the end. If you want to leave comments before the game, go ahead. Also, I'll leave this out on the poll that I have in the chat of who's going to win game 1. 67% of you guys, I don't know if this is bias or anything, are saying that the Mets are going to win. 22% of you guys are saying the Brewers are going to win. And 11% of you guys are pleading the fifth. You don't want to say anything. You don't want to jinx anything. I had to put it in there because, of the superstitious stuff of all of these, things that go on, and a lot of Mets fans being nervous. So other than that, we will see you guys for the post game after the game. Enjoy playoff baseball. Make sure to follow everyone individually. You guys know the drill by now. The podcast, of course, which will be the post game. And is there anything else I'm missing? TikTok, Twitter, all that great stuff. Links are in the description. And, the audio version of the podcast that come out at 9 a.m. Last thing I have to say is, of course, let's go Mets. Let's go get a game 1 victory. Let's fuck around and do it. Why not? We'll see you guys in the post game tonight.